Welcome to the podcast. I have my guest here, Peter Escarcega and Lauren Morris, joining me for our deep dive on one of my favorite films of all time, Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know, when somebody asks,
one of our,
right? You know, when somebody asks the stupid question, "What's your favorite film of all time?" Raiders of the Lost Ark. I will throw that in there from time to time. Obviously, I don't have just one favorite film. That's impossible, but
it's tough not to include it.
So this is, again, to me, it's the greatest action adventure film of all time, and it still holds up till today. It, some of the graphics, I guess, are pretty bad, but regardless, the story is excellent. And yeah, we'll get into it. And to me, this film also launched Steven Spielberg into another stratosphere where now he is the man in Hollywood in terms of becoming the greatest director of our generation. And in 2007, AFI ranked this the number 66th greatest movie of all time. So my first question to you guys, plus or minus on, did AFI get that right? Do you think it is the 66th best film?
I think it's low. I think it should be higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you look at some of those movies.
I would say 66 best of the 80s, maybe. I
Really?
wouldn't say all time. Yeah, I wouldn't say all time.
You think that Raiders was the 66th best movie in the 80s?
I mean, if I'm just thinking of 80s movies.
So it's fair to say it's not high on your list.
I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It's a great 80s movie.
Wow.
Great 80s movie.
Wow.
Rewatching it as
in no way does it transcend and go past the 80s for you at all?
I enjoyed it as a kid. Just rewatching it as a grown man, like really kind of like seeing how it plays out. And I guess it's just more being more self-aware of how movies are made now. But it's a very good adventure movie as a kid. You know, Goonies, you know, those kind of Flight of the Navigator, those kind of fun adventure movies. It's up there with those kind of movies that I can get into as a kid because of like, it's almost like kind of like plays out like a video game almost. But yeah, it's a fun movie for sure.
Well, and that was the concept behind it too. You know, when Lucas came up with this idea. So, you know, in doing some of the research, you know, he actually had this idea before Star Wars. And when he was taking a break from writing the original Star Wars, he started to come up with this idea. And he was always inspired by, like you're saying, the 1930s serials, you know, the cheap Republic films, you know, like you're saying, these Saturday night or the Saturday adventures or whatever. And so that was kind of the genesis of that. And then when him and Spielberg went on vacation to Hawaii when Star Wars was released, and that's when he ultimately pitched this idea to Spielberg, and then they all got together and wrote it with
Indiana Smith originally.
Yeah, it was Indiana Smith originally, and the screenwriter Lawrence Kasdan didn't like it, so they made the switch to Jones. He said it reminded him of another movie called Nevada Smith. So, which was a Steve McQueen film, I believe. So, interesting. In 2019, it was ranked 16 best all time based on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. So it moved up a little bit.
I like that. I like that better than Lawrence's rankings.
I'm not saying it's a bad movie.
I mean, I 70 of just a particular decade is interesting.
I mean, it was the 80s. It was the you know, that was like when like the hero guy became like the big part of movie cinema, right? Like Rambo, or
like, I get it.
You know, that's when like Arnold Schwarzenegger could destroy a whole army by himself. You know, like,
I understand that nostalgia can kind of muddy the mind when it comes to what is your top movies of all times, but I don't know. I always felt like the Raiders just kind of exceeded that sort of. It wasn't that Never Ending Story, which is a nice movie that you just sort of as a kid you just kind of gravitate towards because it was something that was very near and dear to you. And obviously that's not a top 80 movie of all time.
That movie does not hold up. If you watch that movie, Neverending Story, you're gonna be like, why was I so into this movie?
Gosh, I thought we were going to become good friends.
I know, I love the character.
We cannot watch movies together. Apparently,
I love Indiana Jones' character. I just think, like, you know, it's campy to me. Like, just watching it plays on. This is how I looked at it. Okay, being a grown adult now, obviously, kind of the world we've lived in, and I took these notes down because I wanted
being an adult is dumb.
It is tough, but I did kind of it kind of and I know, you know, Paul, you wanted to go over some of these things, but there was a part where Indiana Jones talks about things being in a museum, right?
Yeah.
And then I go back to fast forward to Black Panther, and I'm thinking, like, how did you think you guys got all this stuff in this museum? It's kind of like the whole trope of like this is what I think Indiana Jones should be called, and I wrote this down. It should be called White People Claiming Everything as Their Own. Because that's pretty much what it is. It's like, we go to South America, we're taking the artifact. We're going to Egypt. We're going to wherever we want to go.
Yeah,
it's ours. And I mean, you know, and I know it's a movie and it's fun, and I enjoyed it, and I see no problems with it. But it's just kind of like the brown people in the movie are just kind of like background to, like, you know, what do we?
The ship guy,
we're trying to hope these guys is like, these are the leads, and I get it, but it's kind of funny how it like that movie would probably be dissected more how I'm kind of dissecting it now.
Yeah.
For today's world. And like I said, I take it for entertainment, and it's a fun movie, but it's like, even though there's a line, she goes, and I wrote that one, you can't do this to me, I'm an American. And I'm like, there it is right there. Like, that's our country in a nutshell. Like, we're Americans. What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Been an air of what's the word that I'm trying to think of? Entitlement when it comes to Americans and how we are perceived and how we should be perceived
100%.
Around the world. It's interesting. I never looked at this movie particularly like that. Just maybe because
and
of
not taking it like that.
No, maybe because of when I when I was exposed to it, which was 6, 7 years old.
Children, yeah.
At that point, I was hanging out with all my many different friends, and we all enjoyed the movie quite immensely. But I'm certainly okay with looking at films in retrospect and looking at how they would be perceived nowadays. I think that's important. I think it's an important exercise. It's an interesting point of view because I came at this coming straight from nostalgia. You know what I mean? And it's interesting to come at it with sort of a different take. I appreciate where you're coming from.
No, and I'm not trying to make it, go that way with this whole thing, but I would probably say, because this movie came out before, let's see, I'm 43, so this movie came out in 81. I was like 3 years old. So obviously when I watched it from where I can remember it, I was still a kid.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed, like, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was probably the one that really was like my like Indiana movie. Because that one was just like, a total just adventure movie.
It was scary.
Yeah. And that was another thing I noticed. I wanted to bring that up. It's like this movie was rated PG, which is crazy.
You know why?
What was the ratings back then?
There was no PG-13 back then.
But it only got a PG because they clouded Belloc's face being exploded at the end with a little bit of mist. If they would have kept that straight, it would have been an R rating.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, wow, this is like some.
That was it. That was the criteria.
I wouldn't care if my kids watch this personally. Like, I mean, my youngest is 5. They could watch it all day, but it's just kind of like, that would not be a PG movie today, right? At least
it'd be PG-13 for sure. Yeah.
Right. At least.
Like
the guy's spikes going through the face and head, melting off. That was
yeah.
It was quite frightening, which is why
that,
when Temple of Doom came out, why that was such an elevation in terms of like that terror. that was such a much more scarier movie as Raiders. Raiders had a few moments that were like, whoa, but it wasn't anything extreme. Temple of the Doom was next level.
Well, and that's why a lot of people didn't like Temple of Doom as much, was because of its darker tone, and that's why on the third one they kind of went back with, the Nazis and the weird part is, and I just learned this like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, but Temple of Doom's actually a prequel to this film. And they obviously didn't use terms like that when this film first came out. So you never, even as a kid, you're watching it, you just assume it's the second one because it's irrelevant. It's in a different, different part of the world. And so you just naturally kind of roll with it. But yeah, that's the kind of crazy part is
anything goes.
Yeah. But
anything goes.
What I'm
Temple of Doom. I got it.
I got that right away. Somebody got it.
What I'm hoping with Indiana Jones 5 is, like I said, they kind of go back to one. Obviously, I hope it's way less CGI. I think Spielberg kind of made the George Lucas mistake that he did with the prequels of Star Wars, and he became too reliant on the green screens and CGI, and the look of the film just didn't look like an Indiana Jones film. And then, just like what's his face did on number 7, J.J. Abrams, went back to the practical sets and the lenses and it looked again like a Star Wars film. I'm hoping Steven Spielberg will do the same for this film, for Indiana Jones 5 when it comes out. I think it's supposed to come out next year. So
yeah, no, that scene where they're chasing where they're kind of like, I think they're back in the city, and where, what's her name, Marion, they kind of capture her and they do the whole sword, the guy does the sword thing, and like the way that was shot was awesome, just because of like it was obviously probably on a sound set or stage, and just how like it all kind of played together, and it felt like an adventure, like you really kind of running through trying to figure out how he's trying to get through the rescuer. But that's where I think it's fun, like it just felt like it was like the way he kind of put that together, because I mean, like you said, back then when they get to the graphic, the special effects part, you're like, oh my god, that just does not hold up. But those kind of chase scenes were those are great scenes.
Yep. And so going to it, the couple notes on this, the budget for this film was $18 million, which obviously that was a lot for the time, but even still, when you hear that number, you're just like, that's it? You made this film for $18 million? And then it ended up making $248 million domestically, $389 million worldwide. This was the highest grossing film of 1986. So actually, I'm sorry, 1981.
81.
Yeah.
Well, since Lawrence set us up for the bad stuff about the movie, I've got some ideas. I have some ideas why this movie might not be as great as everybody thinks and remembers it to be. Not even about the movie itself. It's just more of a question that I'm going to pose to the panel this lovely afternoon. So, like, almost like in the same vein that, like in Back to the Future, how Marty McFly doesn't really have a character arc. Like, he starts someplace and he doesn't elevate to a new status quo. He never really learns anything.
Right.
Can an argument be made that Indiana Jones, in a way, there's no real character arc to his character in this movie as well? I mean, does he really contribute? Does he really contribute to the ending of the movie? Does he really?
Yeah. So I did research on that.
Even if he didn't show up, I mean, I think the Nazis still would have found Marion at some point because they were looking for Ravenwood. I think at some point they would have eventually opened up the Ark and eventually been killed by the Ark. Like, Indy was just there as a reason for us to go on this journey to tell this story. So is he really the protagonist in this film?
Yeah. So this was basically posed on Big Bang Theory, and they basically did a whole episode on this, and
so good.
That was the major question that they asked. They're one of the I think it was Mayim Balak's character, I think, poses it. She's like, Indiana Jones doesn't contribute at all to this film. And you're almost right. You're almost right until the very end. And that's actually how he contributes. So you mentioned at the end where all the Nazis get wiped out, right? Where Indiana Jones actually is important to this film is because they were there to witness all that. That's how they recovered the Ark and then got put in and hidden away by the US government. If he was not there, the Nazis would have gone to that island and gotten it, and they would have, and somebody else would have then gotten destroyed. But the Nazis still would have had that in their possession because they lost everybody. And you'd have been like, hey, we haven't heard from anybody. Where are they? And you would go, obviously, and look for them, because that they're always in contact with the Fuhrer. The Fuhrer wants to know. The Fuhrer wants to know. So it would have just.
It's a bit of an assumption. I mean, I get it. It's a logical assumption, but it's still an assumption nonetheless.
But your main point is right, though, is that there is no character arc for Indiana Jones.
But is he an actual protagonist?
I would say technically not.
If you had to tell me who is Indiana Jones, who's the antagonist in this film, I mean, your brain would immediately go to Belloc.
Yeah.
But there's no final confrontation between the two. So how can they actually be the protagonist and the antagonist of the film if there's never a confrontation at the end to sort of resolve something towards the end of the film, right?
Well, I think that's the brilliance of the film, is because you're right. It on almost every level, it breaks every sort of script rule and all that. But that's what makes it kind of a reflective of the serials, because
that's what I was thinking. That was my opinion as well.
Because that's
what makes it so great.
It just kind of go on an adventure at adventure and adventure. So you don't really, because you keep going on another adventure, you really just don't think about it and don't really care. But again, I agree, it's not going to win a screenwriting contest, and you're not. It's not going to, like I said, Harrison Ford's character, we don't really learn much besides you just like the guy and he's funny, and
he's basically Han Solo to me in a Jones form. Like, he's the cool guy, because I mean, even that part where
he is the cool guy,
because I finished, he's like, he would sacrifice Marion to me to get the Ark if it meant like one or the other. There was that part where,
of course,
he gets the rocket launcher, the bazooka or whatever, and he's kind of like, I'll destroy this thing.
She's collateral damage in that scenario.
Yeah, and then I mean, he's like thinking like, I'm not actually going to do this. I'm here for the Ark. Like, if she makes it, great. Even after he thought he blew her up, he was kind of like, well, okay, I'll have a drink for her, but I got to get this Ark. Like, that's the goal. Like,
can we go talk to Belloc real fast?
Yeah. So I mean,
Belosh.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you kind of take it as face value, he's basically a grave robber. Like, that's kind of what he is.
Yeah.
But he's a professor and an archaeologist or whatever it is. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's what he is.
Well, that's what so many, like, the obvious, it's just like how Top Gun kind of increased naval admissions, because it basically glorified it. Archaeology was kind of the same way. Where in universities, everybody was signing up to be an archaeologist, and archaeologists were pissed because basically saying that same thing of, dude, you're not, that's not archaeology. Like, you're not supposed to take stuff from the sites and that's not what archaeology is. Because I read somewhere where that was like their biggest issue was, they had to restrict him a little bit, because then it's like full on illegal what he's doing, and then he's just a criminal, and that's not good.
Killing people at will, no big deal.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's, like I said, I think, like, if you took it for what it is, like, he's gonna do whatever it takes to get to the artifact. I mean, even in the beginning, like, those guys which Alfred Molina, I didn't even realize that was Alfred Molina until I watched it right now. But it wasn't like he was just really. It was like, whatever. I lost a couple guys that got me out here. Like, I had the statue in my hand.
He was given as guides were out to backstab him. So
yeah, but I mean, it's just kind of like that. Like,
from the beginning,
just kind of like they're just still kind of like, Well, they're gone. I mean,
Yeah.
these guys totally.
If somebody tries to
would have
cross
killed
me, I can give a crap if they were killed
You're
by
right.
me or
But it's just
somebody
like,
else.
it was like to kind of like dismiss it though. It's like I almost could have died, and these guys could have killed me, and they died, and I lost what I was actually going for. That was the big like the whole like him not getting the relic was the biggest thing, not the fact that I almost got killed multiple times. The people who brought me out here tried to kill me. They set me up. This other rival guy
It's part of the
is trying to
job.
kill me. Yeah, it's kind of like
Part of the job
like,
is almost getting killed. Being
Apparently.
associated with people that are supposed to get you to some place and then have those people turn on you and they happen to die. I'm not going to shed a tear over them. Right?
By the way,
I'm not saying shed a tear, but I'm just saying like that would like he was telling the story about how he had it in his hand, and like that was like the thing that he like to me like almost being killed and backstabbed and double crossed and everything else would have been the bigger part of the story.
yeah.
But he was like, I had it in my hand and then I lost it, or even being chased by a boulder or booby traps or all the other stuff that happened.
The boulder,
was just like,
I feel like would have.
I lost.
I think that
was his main
I think
thing.
that talks to, and it kind of explains in every adventure that India has ever gone on or whatever it is. There's always like it's always crazy. There's always a million kind of dangerous and amazing things that happened, and it's almost like me walking to Starbucks and then walking to work. It's that interesting to him because it happens all the time. The fact of the matter is, he went there as a goal. He had a goal. He had to get this idol. He didn't get it, even though it was in his hands. And fucking Belloc came around again and took it from him. That was his takeaway.
That should have been a line in the movie. Fucking Belloc, and just the whole movie. Fucking Belloc.
By the way, interesting fact. Do you know the guy? One of his other guides, not Alfred Molina, but the other guy. You know, he's also the guy with the patch on the motorcycle with the monkey.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He is. They're the same dude, same actor.
They just recycled
the mechanic is the German mechanic who they was fighting with in the scene. He's also in the Nepali scene, the Nepali bar scene.
Yeah,
not a double.
The other one.
Well, they had a low budget.
Fun fact, Lawrence.
So one of the things that I noticed on this viewing is how incredibly smoking hot his class is. Like, I want to know how to get to that.
I didn't know that. I noticed that too. Like, I would have never noticed that as a child. But yeah, all the girls were there.
It was like a 70% ratio of guys to girls, and then all the girls were very good looking.
And the only guy like acts like a douchebag and is like, "Oh, here's an apple."
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
They say the apple is the power move in movies. If you're eating an apple, you're just like, the confidence is like, that's what the apple's for. But yeah, I noticed that too. I would have never thought about that as a kid, but I noticed.
So
those office hours.
Let's move to the did you know, and I bet you didn't section of this podcast. So one of my favorite things, like when I watch films, I love to go on IMDb and look at the trivia section because there's always cool little facts about the production that you never heard about. And so I just wanted to throw out a couple of those. I already mentioned.
I got some. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, we can just rotate then. So I found this is super cool. So one of my favorite scenes in the film is when he's facing the swordsman and the swordsman doing all of his moves, and then all of a sudden he just pulls out the gun. But apparently that was not in the script. And the reason they did a couple takes of Indiana supposed to like do his whip and all that stuff, but him and several of the crew had food poisoning, and so he couldn't execute the stunt. So he's just out of like pure necessity. He's like, can I just shoot the guy instead? And Spielberg actually agreed to it, and that it obviously made the final cut.
And it's an iconic moment in film.
Yeah, and I think it speaks, I think, a lot to his character because this is kind of the original Die Hard, where Indiana Jones is not the most athletic guy. He's not the strongest guy. He may not even necessarily
romantic guy, not the sweetest guy.
He may not even be the smartest guy because Belloc obviously always beats him. But he's constantly getting beat up in this film. Like the German guy, I loved how they fought too. How they both like stuck their fists up like that. That was, I found that super hilarious. Yeah. Like, hey buddy, we should fight. But yeah, he's just constantly getting beat up in this film, and that's what makes the scene you know, with him and Marion on the ship, so awesome because, you know, I we've all been there before. You know, we've all played sports and stuff where you're literally you're just beat up and you're finally can just lay in bed and not move. And
I played sports. Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna use big quotes on that one for you too.
I excelled at sports.
Fun fact about Pete: Pete scored in his own basket in high school.
Why do you think I know more about movies than about athletics?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
A lot of sitting around time.
All right, Pete, you said you had a couple of ones that you wanted to say. Go, why don't you?
Yeah, I actually found out, and based on our last conversation, Paul, brilliant host that you are, you love Michael Bay.
Yeah.
Found out that he actually worked at Lucasfilm at the time and was actually the one who filed away all the storyboards.
Oh, wow.
Didn't think the movie was going to do anything until he finally saw the final cut released.
Mm-hmm.
That's what made him want to become a director someday.
Nice. That is a fun fact.
That's your man.
Yeah, that's a fun fact.
See?
Another cool item that I found out about. So remember when I think it's after the school. So Brody visits Indiana Jones at his house.
Oh, Marcus.
And he's wearing and Indiana Jones comes out and he's wearing a robe.
His robe.
Right?
Yeah.
So apparently the original concept of the character was a very James Bondy type of character, and they wanted to be kind of a playboy. But that was Lucas wanted that persona. But Spielberg said an archaeologist doesn't have time to be a playboy. Like, it doesn't fit his character because, you know, if he really only cares about, you know, the archaeology and the artifacts and all that, he wouldn't really have time to be a playboy. So there's supposed to be a woman in the other room, but they cut that scene to shift this non-playboy type of Indiana Jones.
Be a playboy.
He's about the work. He's about the work.
It's about grave robbing.
There's always time.
I don't have any fun facts except for the fact that I did recently go to Disneyland with the kids. We did not go on the Indiana Jones ride, but thinking back to that ride and going based off of the movies, that's a crazy ride. Like, it is scary. Yeah. And that boulder and the animatronics of the Indy kind of hanging there is, like you said, that's Indiana Jones. It's never going to be pretty. It's not going to be Tom Cruise Mission Impossible style. It's not going to be like, he's not this like super athletic, just, you know, he ain't Dwayne The Rock Johnson running through the forest. Right. He's just like, I'm an everyday guy who's, you know, for whatever reason has a whip. I know they explore that in the was it The Last Crusade, why he had the whip, but you know, he's just an unconventional guy, and you know, he kind of gets by how he gets by. You know, I mean, there's thinking of like the two video games that because you know, I grew up playing video games, is the Tomb Raider and Uncharted. Okay. Those two games. Those are like, you know, kind of like those like adventure, like problem solving, puzzle solving kind of type deals that obviously he did. And then this is the thing that I wanted to say. This was my it wasn't a fun fact, but I just had to think like what they were doing in the studio on that first scene where they're running through the jungle and they get into the cave and they're kind of going through looking for that little statue. Like the Foley guys, like were they just like making the little whistling, like the arrow darts, like like just like they had to really employ like the Foley's budget had to be pretty high for that movie just to kind of get all like the little sound effects of every little like thing that was going on, because when you go on a Disneyland ride, you go through a part where they do the little arrow darts. Yeah. And you can kind of feel the breeze. So I thought that was kind of cool. But
yeah, I've got some I got some cool things on the sound and stuff like that. I'll be hitting those up later. What
you know, one of the things that I enjoyed, because like when we had this assignment to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark one more time, it's like seen it a billion times. But the cool thing about it was like watching it and like actually finding, I mean, when I was a kid, I thought it was a perfect movie. Obviously, it was like, this is amazing. And I love it. This is a perfect movie. But then I can watch it again, you notice that there's certain things, like there's actual real errors in this film.
Yeah.
Like, for example, when Marion like takes the medallion when she's sitting there after everyone leaves, she's sitting there and it's around her neck, and then like the next cut, the chain that was around her neck is actually hanging down off of her hand, like almost like
Yeah.
that was a clear edit like mistake.
Yeah.
The guy getting stabbed and the orange is just falling off his back. I noticed that one.
Yeah.
While we were watching it.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden the oranges are like perfectly lined up. Like, do they stab him and then the oranges went through his back, through his stomach, and to his back?
Yeah, I saw that too. I did notice that.
Yeah.
I was like, what happened?
Yeah.
And also right
killed
before
that guy in real life.
Right before then too. You know, it's like it's kind of a comedy, like how they're fighting. But if you watch Marion in that fight scene, she is doing the worst job at hitting the guy with a pan. Like she's not even hitting the guy, and it looks so bad. And I've never noticed it before. And I wasn't trying to like pick it apart or anything, but it was bad. Like, I don't know how someone was like, this is a good take.
I think the whole car chase, the whole car chase scene where like, okay, I mean, this is every movie. Like, no one ever takes their foot off the gas. Somehow the car always is driving. And then at the same time, he was driving a stick shift. So like at no part of they have the Ark in the truck, right? And they're hauling it. And then the other guys are in the convertible, and they're having this huge fight scene while they're still driving straight. Like, this will just not work out in real life.
It'd be tough.
Who's switching the car around? And then the guy, then he goes underneath the car and then whoops back around. Like, I mean, you know, it's a movie, so obviously you give it, you take it for what it's worth. But I'm like, that would never work.
They always say you allow a movie like one instance, like that doesn't make sense. Like every movie's allowed one occurrence of that.
Suspension of belief.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like some examples, because I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. Like, shoot, I don't remember. But I mean, it was
like every Fast and Furious movie, every Die Hard movie. Like every.
I
mean, Fast and Furious, yeah. They I think they break the rule. Like,
I think they're allowed 97 different things. Like in terms of storytelling, I'm talking about just in terms of storytelling. Like, there's like certain things where you're just like, okay, that was the one occurrence. There was one Back to the Future, and I can't really remember what it was.
It's the I know what you're talking about. I think isn't the one in Back to the Future, I think it has to do with the picture or the family. I think, if I remember correctly.
I don't know. I'll think about it.
Yeah.
Stay tuned to our next episode.
Yeah,
to find out the answer.
When Pete remembers.
Back to the Future. That's the one.
A couple other
number one 80s movie, by the way. Just so you know, number one 80s movie is all the Back to the Futures.
Nice.
That would be on my number one list.
Right, now we can hang out again.
Yeah. Well, Back to the Future.
We can start talking as friends.
Back to the Future will be coming up pretty soon. There's a lot of good stuff on that one.
Oh my gosh, there's a million things about that movie.
There's a couple cool things I also found interesting about this. I already kind of mentioned just how much Indiana Jones gets beat up in this film. He actually physically got beat up in this. Apparently the plane like ran over his knee and tore ligaments in his knee, and he's lucky. Over a knee? Like the wheel of the plane like accidentally ran him over. And so he just basically iced it up and kept on going. But it's one of the things that impressed me about Harrison Ford as the actor is how, because apparently he broke his leg on Star Wars, the new one. Like, this guy constantly gets hurt in his films.
And he always had a bad hip. That's why he kind of runs with his shoulders up. Because
I got a fun fact. I do have a fun fact.
You lied.
I have a fun fact. And I remember, I don't know where I saw this, but the snake scene where all the snakes are on the floor.
Yeah.
There's actually a glass that's, and you can actually see it in the movie.
Yeah, you can see the reflection.
You can see the reflection. So like he's not actually, they're never actually in any danger with the snakes, but those are real snakes. And there was like I said, they put a big glass up. And if you look closely when Marion's like down there at the bottom, you can see the reflection of the glass.
Yeah, I remember seeing that as a kid and not really registering what it was until later on when I started to understand what it meant to make a film. And they wouldn't really put somebody in front of a deadly snake like that. But I remember seeing that as a kid, like why do I see its reflection? But I ignored it. And I was like, it's probably nothing.
Apparently the assistant director actually got bit by a python, and the snake was just holding on to the hand, and the assistant director just calmly like, I need somebody to yank. Yeah, he wouldn't like let it go. And he had, what does it say? Oh, so he needed someone to whip the snake, and then the snake like eventually let go. But the python was not injured in a good way.
What about when Marion gets into that basket and the basket's still open, but then all of a sudden the monkey climbs on top, the basket's closed.
Oh yeah.
See? A lot of mistakes in this movie. This movie's not as good as Lawrence has told us. Yeah. And I agree with him. He's convinced me.
Last fun fact, I did see Shia LaBeouf about 2 weeks ago at my restaurant.
Nice.
He was there with his family. Seemed like a nice guy, but
how was
really
his
grumpy.
behavior?
Very,
yeah. You suck, bartender.
Very calm. He was a nice guy, but
you call this a beer?
He did look pretty bummy, but I guess that's what they do. But he was nice. Seemed nice.
But was he bummy but still totes cute?
And that kind of like, bad boy look. But he was with his wife or his kid's mom. I don't know who the lady was. And another guy who looked like he could have been on Duck Dynasty.
No.
Maybe his dad. I don't know. Older guy.
Nice
guy.
No, I think his dad's dead, isn't it? And his dad died, I thought. That's what that one film was about.
Some Harley Davidson looking dude. That's all I know. That's the best way I can kind of describe him.
Nice. All right, let me go run through some of these quick fun facts, and we'll move on to our next section here. But so the boulder in the beginning, Harrison Ford actually outran that boulder several times, and then you can kind of see it on this take. He stumbles a little bit. That was not supposed to be intentional, and they kept him in because it looked good.
Yeah, it looked real good.
Really quick on that boulder. Rewatching it, I'm like, there were so many different ways he could have avoided that boulder. If he would have just ran towards it underneath the ramp.
Yeah, but it would have blocked the thing.
But how would he have escaped? Yeah, what if it blocked
the boulder would have he could have ran under it, because it was when he goes into the tunnel, you could see where the boulder is going to come out. Right. There's like a ramp. He could have went underneath the ramp. The boulder would have passed him, knocked out the wall. He's out. It would have worked. Trust me.
But at the end, when he jumps out, it stops. Almost like blocks the exit. So what if he would have been trapped there forever?
They're never trapped there forever. That was the point I was going to make on my notes. I put
as Belloc
they made the classic movie mistake of just trapping them in that thing and not seeing them die. I'm just saying. It's just they made the classic movie villain mistake where we're gonna seal you up in this tomb or whatever that place was, and we'll just assume you'll die. And then, of course, they escaped. But that's a whole other thing.
Well, I'm just gonna avoid you real fast and not have this intense running sequence.
We're gonna tell you the whole plan, and then we're gonna try to kill you later.
Do you know that the guy who was flying that was flying the plane when he was trying to escape right after that scene, his name is Jock? I thought his name was Doc, but it's only because of subtitles that I was able to find out that his name was actually Jock.
Oh yeah.
Doc, start the engine. Doc. I thought it was Doc, like doctor, like Doc.
And by the way,
his name is Jock.
Going back to poor screenwriting, that guy guy should have helped out somehow in the movie later. Like that guy, it was like a one and done. And it's like, how come
wasn't he in another one of the movies? No, the pilot?
Not Jock.
But I feel like that guy.
I'm thinking of the plane scene from the Temple of Doom where the guys actually jumped out. So I guess it wasn't.
Oh yeah.
Okay, it's time for pop quiz, Lawrence. Who was the original Indiana Jones that they wanted to be cast? Go.
Sean Connery.
Wrong.
No idea.
Well, you actually jumped a section, Pete. That was in our casting section.
Oh, sorry.
And let's just jump there now.
Tom Selleck, son.
So yeah, that's the get.
But he couldn't do it. Why? Why couldn't he do it?
Because he was already committed to
Magnum. Yeah.
He was actually in Hawaii, although apparently
exactly right.
Apparently Magnum PI was actually finished shooting, and so he actually could have done it, but they basically kind of not lied to him, but they were wrong in terms of his.
Not that I'm reading Wikipedia right now, but it's Bill Murray, Nick Nolte, Steve Martin, Chevy Chase.
Would have never worked.
Jack Nicholson.
None. Wrong.
It was Harrison Ford. Like that was. I mean, it's his role. Like there's no one else.
It's his role, right?
Yeah, like, no one else could be him. And like that and Han Solo are like, you know, it's so funny. Like I said, I love the Temple or Raiders of the Lost Ark was my favorite movie, but I do love him as Indiana Jones, but I love him more as Han Solo. I still say this to my wife to this day. When she goes, "I love you," what do you think I say?
I know.
Exactly. That's all. And she, for years, she never knew why I said that. She's like, "Why do you say that?" I'm like, "How do you not know what that means?"
Because I'm a dick, honey. That's why.
I had to Google it. I had to show her on YouTube. Like, this is where. Oh, that this whole time, it just went over her head. But greatest line.
But you have to do it with that sort
ever.
of like that cockiness, like.
Oh, I did.
But still, a little bit of sensitivity.
So, guys, let's do this. Let's just say you can't pick Harrison Ford. On your list there's a bunch of names on there. Who else would you pick for Indiana Jones? Again, I know Harrison Ford is.
Are we talking about in the 80s, like at that
in the
time?
80s. Yeah, in the 80s. I think I have mine.
I'm not
and then who would you cast today if you had to pick somebody from today?
I'm looking at this list. There's not any one of these people that I would have picked.
Oh, there's one I would love. I'll go ahead and say mine just because I
don't say Michael Biehn. Just don't say it.
No, I won't. David Hasselhoff.
Oh, come on. It would have been a mockery. It would have been a mockery.
It would have been like a spoof movie. Like it wouldn't even feel.
It would have been Charlie Sheen doing.
I've actually, that's a good one.
Maybe.
I think Charlie Sheen.
Martin Sheen. I mean, well, if we're talking about like at that time in '81, like those actors, like if I had a like pool of actors from '81 at that time, you figure they'd have to be from 30s to 40s, mid 30s to 40s.
Unfortunately,
I'd probably say that. I like Martin Sheen only because of the Romance in the Stone and the Jewel and Isle. Like that was the kind of the same type adventure-ish movie. Tom Selleck. I'm just looking at this guy, Tom Selleck.
Yeah,
I mean, he's classically kind of handsome kind of guy, but
even John Calvin,
and he's funny.
Yeah, he's charismatic.
These guys, I'm looking at these guys. None of them could have done it.
No, I think Tom Selleck.
Yeah,
it's a different film, but
no,
Bruce Willis. But I think Bruce Willis at the time might have been a little too young.
Okay, I'll say Mark Harmon only because there was a charm to him when he acts where Harrison Ford gives that sort of vibe whenever he kind of does that little boyish, sort of childish sort of smile or things like that Mark Harmon can replicate.
Yeah.
All these other actors can't replicate that sort of Harrison Ford has this ability to be like this straight-nosed, like hardcore, I'm an archaeologist, I'm getting a job done. But then all of a sudden he'll do this like little boyish sort of like smile or almost like a little giggle that none of these actors could have pulled off except for Mark Harmon. All right, my vote's Mark Harmon.
The guy from The Rock, and the guy from The Rock, I can't think of his name. Jesus, not The Rock, the guy. No,
Michael Biehn.
No, Harrison. Jesus, he's in Westworld. He's like the main bad guy in Westworld.
Michael Biehn.
Michael Biehn.
No.
Is it?
And I have to Google.
Is it Michael Biehn?
I don't even know who Michael Biehn is.
So who would you pick today if you had to do somebody today? Who would you go with?
Ed Harris. That's who I'd pick. Ed Harris. I think that guy would be awesome.
Interesting.
He's kind of got the look. Today, man.
I'm trying to think like today.
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg. Just kidding. I would not. No, that would be horrible.
Come on.
I'd pick his brother over him. I'd pick his brother.
A good conversation starter. That's for sure.
Well, I don't think that'd be a bad. I don't think it'd be bad.
No, Mark Wahlberg. No,
I don't know.
He's just too.
I think it would be
I would
ruined
pick
today. I think if they would have picked anybody today, they would have gone with somebody like The
Like Tom
Rock,
Holland?
or they would have gone with somebody over the top, and it wouldn't have been as special as it was when it came out. I don't know. There was something different
Yeah,
about it.
you can't do like because was Harrison Ford considered a superstar when
Yeah,
this
because
movie
of
came
Star
out?
Wars.
Because
Yeah,
because
Star
of
Wars.
Star Wars, right?
Yeah,
It kind of notched him up quite a bit.
yeah. I mean, I know Chris Pratt was considered.
I would probably say that I could see him because he's kind of got that same kind of like
Yeah,
kind of goofy. Could play serious. Could play
maybe a John Krasinski.
I just don't see it.
No, I would probably say Chris Pratt over Krasinski, but
I might go
the other.
Krasinski
I would pick the
he's
other guy
not
from the
as goofy.
I would
He's done some real serious work,
Yeah,
and he's
maybe Jeremy Renner, maybe kind of short.
Maybe.
yeah. I would say just maybe not funny enough. That's my. I'm trying to find guys that are because like you mentioned.
I'm looking for that charm.
Yeah,
That
and
little
but
bit
he
of
and he
charm.
has to be. And you mentioned it earlier, Lawrence. There's a very everyday quality to him. So that's why, like, I wouldn't say The Rock. The Rock would naturally, you'd think,
No, he's just too.
but The
like,
Rock is too powerful.
Yeah, no, he's
And you need a guy that can basically is going to get his ass kicked. And that's
Yeah.
who's
I think
fighting.
there's a thing where The Rock says he can't get his ass kicked in movies. Like there's like a thing in his contract
Yeah.
where he can't just get dominated in the movie in the fight scene. Like he has to always kind of at least hold his own. Like,
But who
which is
would
crazy to
appeal
me.
to both men and women? Who appeals to both, like the action adventure, like wow, this is incredible, but then also does that little bit of charm and does that little bit of boyish thing to kind of draw the women in and make them love him even more. I mean, that's why Harrison Ford, I think, knocked it out of the park. So I don't know who even.
I mean, I like Tom
encapsulates
Holland,
that
but he's
today.
young. He would be young for the role. He's just too young. But
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of got that about him, right? At least that's kind of how seems like
I
he's
certainly
positioned
wouldn't let
himself right now.
LaBeouf take over. Like,
Yeah.
no offense.
Oh no. I mean, I saw him in real life.
Even though you guys are buddy at this point.
Well, I think that there was probably the thought process of that initially, right? Like Shia LaBeouf's going to take the mantle, but obviously I think because the movie didn't do well, and that's when he kind of took a turn in his career. I think that's ultimately what stopped that trajectory. All right, well, let's go to our next section, which is, and the Oscar goes to. So what this could be, you can give it to a cast member, you can give it to a crew member, but who do you think did the best in this film in their respective field? Meaning, it could be Steven Spielberg, it could be the writer Lawrence Kasdan, it could be the cinematographer John Williams. It's up to you. But who do you think won this movie? Who gets the best award?
Well, I think sorry, Lawrence, I'll just jump right in here.
Jump.
I think that Harrison Ford, Steven Spielberg, and you had all these players that were sort of on the forefront of this movie, and those are the people that you heard about. But I don't think this movie would have been nearly what it was without John Williams. I think he was the number one key component to this film. I think that music is iconic. I think it's something that sticks in your head all day long. Once you hear it, you know exactly what it's referenced to. And if any other music was attached to this movie, I don't think it would have been as impactful.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, John Williams obviously is a legend, and everybody knows what the Raiders of the Lost Ark or the Indiana Jones theme is. And
the Raiders March.
That's what's so crazy about like John Williams is he is the sound for so many different films and characters, and which is why he's the GOAT when it comes to composers.
Lawrence has a look on his face though.
No, I 100% agree. I'd probably say if not him, then Spielberg. I think he's the guy. And maybe I'm looking at like the body of work of just him and then because and I kind of looked at it like this movie had Easter eggs, right? Like, I mean, kind of Marvel's big on the Easter egg thing, but that last scene where they're putting the Ark away, and then they obviously brought that full circle in.
Yeah.
The whatever that one with the skulls, but you know what I mean? Kind of like you had to remember this part, and it played into another part down the road, which obviously Marvel has made like a whole, career off of this as of late. But I mean, it's shot. I think, like I said, if you take it for when it was filmed in the 80s, early 80s, because you figure he's coming off of all the other things. It's a great action adventure movie. Like like I said, the writing and the acting are all part of it, but I think it just takes you on this adventure. And I mean, for as a child of the 80s, that's what all those movies really remind me of. Like I said, it's the Goonies, it's Back to the Future. It's kind of like these, like, even Star Wars came out in the 70s, but we was appreciated obviously in the 80s. It took you on that, like, you're really going somewhere that you could never be in real life. That like kind of like this is a real, like, you're going to an imaginary world where things that you would never be able to be involved in real life are happening, and you get to see it play out. And he brought that all to life, and he's responsible for a lot of those, just how the movies are even made today. So
yeah, and I can support your argument.
Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
I can support your argument too, because what we will end up finding out are the decisions that he makes that bring on. Obviously, Spielberg gets the credit, and deservedly so. What his influence on this film is huge. I mean, we talked about Indiana Jones instead of Indiana Smith. We talked about him not being a playboy versus being a playboy. So he makes so many critical decisions in this film that make it what it is. And what is even better decisions for him are who he recruits to be on this film. So we just mentioned John Williams, who becomes his composer for the next 40 years. The editor Michael Kahn, who's one of the best editors of all time, the editor on this film. Who else is there? I mean, again, casting, Harrison Ford. He's the one that had to convince George Lucas, like, Harrison Ford's our guy, because Lucas didn't want Harrison Ford because he didn't want they had already done too many projects together, so he didn't want that stigma. So Spielberg, is a great answer, and deservedly so, because there's a reason why if anybody else directs this film, it probably doesn't work, because for all the reasons that we've said before. It's too cheesy, or it's that the tone isn't right, or all that. He knows how to bring it all together.
All right, Lawrence, you win this round.
Well, I haven't even said mine yet. But
that's right. It's 1-0, Lawrence. I get it.
Okay, so I'm, I you mentioned before, there's a lot of big name hitters on here, but I wanted to highlight somebody. As I was doing the research, I kept seeing this guy's name show up, and especially when you're talking about the 80s. But the guy's name is Ben Burt, and he's the sound designer for this film. And what was so awesome is some of the how they achieved the sound, and I really noticed it this time around too. There's so many extra sounds going on this film, like when he's in the tomb and Marion runs into all the skeletons. There's a bunch of extra screaming and yelling and all that stuff, and that's sound design. Because if you just have that a very bland,
I mentioned that earlier, like the whizzing of the things. Sound was super important in this movie, even the exaggerated ones. I mean, I remember when I first saw this movie, that just Indy punching that guy in the face, and and having it be this loud explosion of a punch sound. I'd never heard that before. It was so over the top, and yet it was so Indiana Jones. It was a classic sound.
The sound design was excellent. And again, they made very conscious choices. Some of the cool stuff that I found was the sounds that were used after the Ark was open were synthesized using human vocalizations and recorded animal cries of dolphins and sea lions to make it sound otherworldly. Again, it's just like, how do you come up with this stuff, and the sounds for the subsequent sparkle and beams were recorded with the old gear used for the early Frankenstein movies. Again, that this is where you take the difference between a good sound designer and a great sound designer is the creativity level of this guy is just out of this world. To achieve the sounds of thousands of snakes slithering, Ben Burt stuck his fingers into a cheese casserole, and this was augmented by applying wet sponges to the grip tape on a skateboard. It's like,
I like to do that.
insane. The giant boulder that chases after Indiana Jones at the start of the film was made of fiberglass. In order to get the proper sound effects for the giant boulder, he and the sound crew tried pushing boulders down a hill, but the sounds we're getting weren't that what they're looking for. Later that day, as they were leaving in a Honda Civic and coasting down a gravel embankment, Burt noticed that the sound was just what he was looking for, so he grabbed a microphone and held it near one of the Civic's rear tires to record the effect. Create the sound of the heavy lid of the Ark being slid open, he simply recorded him moving the lid of his toilet cistern at home. And then he selected a 30-30 Winchester rifle for the sound of Jones's pistol. Again, this is what makes a guy great and why he gets my vote for the Oscar. But
he was okay. He did all right with that whole sound thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the boulder though. The boulder thing, I can't. How do they get the boulder up there? How do they find a perfectly round boulder? Like, there's so many questions on that boulder.
Right.
Like this is a thing that must have been made thousands of years ago, or somehow that boulder stuck through it. They got it up there with very little technology, and they knew stepping in these spots would.
The Incas knew what they were doing.
You know what?
Pyramids, man. I mean, come on.
I think they made this.
You know what I found out too? So one of my favorite cartoons of all time was DuckTales. And there's one of the DuckTales, they go to South America and there's like a bunch of gold temples and stuff like that. Apparently that was a comic book, and that's what inspired that opening scene from George Lucas. He read a Scrooge McDuck
DuckTales.
Yeah. I always thought
they
they
were
had
looking
relevance
for the City of Gold. They were looking for the City of Gold. That was
exactly.
I remember those episodes. That was like a whole Like I said, that 80s time. That
was a two-part
DuckTales cartoon. That was like a whole thing because it was the We could have a whole podcast on DuckTales.
That's next. That's next. All right, guys. So the next category, I call it it's not your fault. The most powerful scene that gets you emotional. This is named after, of course, man. My favorite scene in Good Will Hunting.
It's not you, man.
It's not your fault, Pete. So what in your mind, and we'll start with Lawrence first on this one. What was your most powerful scene that gets you some sort of emotion? So I don't want to define emotion for you. It could be chills. It can be.
We're not telling you how to feel.
Yeah, I'm not telling you how to feel.
Not telling you how to feel, but it has to be specific.
I mean,
anything that made you feel something.
I think the scene, and I kind of mentioned this in jest, but it was like like, we're going to tell you the plan, and then we're going to trap you in this thing and not see if you actually die, and then somehow they figure their way out. That was one, because it was kind of like, I've always lived, I've had these kind of dreams and stuff where you're always kind of like, you're being chased or whatever the situation is, and you always kind of figure your way out. And it's kind of like that, like, it was like, okay, we're trapped in this. They cover the tomb up, or wherever they're in. They cover it up. The snakes are there. How do we get out of here? Obviously. And it's just like, I think it always kind of makes me think, like, if I was trapped in a certain situation, what do I do? Like, okay, start looking at my resources. What do I have to work with? And how do I get out of that situation? And, it's Indiana Jones. He kind of MacGyvered the whole, like, I see the snakes coming out of this hole. There must be an entryway or a tunnel or whatever. And he figures it out because he's Indiana Jones. But, that was
a way out.
I wouldn't say it was like, it didn't change my like outlook on life or anything, but that was a powerful thing. And just, watching the Nazis get destroyed, that's always a cool thing to see Nazis get melted, literally. So that was always fun. But I wouldn't say there was something that just like, man, that was really like, that hit home, or that I was just more observant. I was more observant of, like you said, the time period and how it all played out. I did like that they had the black captain. I think that was kind of cool. And he was there were the pirate guys, and he was loyal. like you said, he was a loyal friend, and it all worked out. But I would say there was something that spoke to me, that I just take it as a fun adventure movie, and it really, I like the whole kind of, it's just like, this is pure fun imagination fiction that obviously would never play out like this in real life, but it's fun to see it kind of play out in a movie where kind of there's no real rules to anything.
Yeah. Awesome. Pete, what about you?
Wait. For me, it was when we actually caught a glimpse into Indiana Jones, who wasn't Indiana Jones. I mean, we saw glimpses of it when he was doing his teacher in front of all those hot chicks, and he was stumbling over his words, and you kind of got a sense of who he was as just a normal person, but he wasn't vulnerable then. Even afterwards, when they brought him into where the FBI guys, FBI, CIA, who were those people? I forget.
Top men.
Government officials.
Top men. Top men that he was talking to.
Yeah.
Even then, he still had a certain sort of levelness to him, but only when he was in the ship. When he didn't want Marion's help to help him, he doesn't need a nurse and all this stuff. But then he starts pointing out all these places that don't hurt, and then he's like, kind of like right around here hurts a little bit, right about here. And it was clear that at his heart of hearts, what he really wanted outside of fortune and glory was, he loved Marion since he was younger, and what would be more perfect at this moment than to have her heal his lips, and you got you got a sense of who he was and his real person and his vulnerability, and that was it. That was my favorite spot. Nothing in the movie makes you want to cry.
No, obviously it's not that movie. So my scene
was melting off.
Is unique, and it's kind of where we get the historical backstory with the Ark and all that, and that's when the music that start playing that, and they opened up. They're starting to figure out what they need to do next, right? And so it's with the top men, and it's Brody and it's Indiana Jones. Right, he's at the chalkboard, and he's like, the staff is this, and they basically, it's figuring out the plan. But combined with the music, and they open up the book, and there's just this painting, and maybe this is just like my Sunday school background growing up, but when you open up the book and you see the Israelites holding the Ark of the Covenant and all that, for me, like, that's what, like, I remember that as a kid, like, buying into this movie now, because now it's like, it's the Bible, it's real, it's now you actually the believability level for the whole movie for me was sold right at that moment when he opened up the Bible.
Can I ask you a question though? Why did he have that big giant Bible with him?
Because it's a Bible college. I think it's a Bible college, isn't it?
But he was talking about something completely different when he left his office, and he had a whole bunch of like rolled up scrolls, and he had his briefcase, and he has just this book
it's called convenience.
He just happens to open it right to this image of the Ark shooting lightning out and killing all these people, and God, just like, what was the point of him having that book?
Because that's how they figure out what the staff
would have been nice if I knew why that book was there in the first place. Why did he have that book? Did he know?
You just ruined my best.
I think that's
shit on my best.
I think it's very important. What the hell is he doing with that big heavy? It's not like having, like, I'm not carrying around this Life magazine around, and I mean, these top men want to know.
It's the same reason why I have this thing, and I'm thick Indiana Jones book right here, Pete.
But it's not.
Help me out.
Thick. My book isn't this thick, and it's not 50 pounds, and I'm not just lugging it around with a bookmark where the Ark is, where I'm like, oh my God, look at that. There's the Ark. I just opened it. There it is.
No, he flipped through the pages. He's like, oh, here it is.
I watched specifically. He just opens it and he's like, oh my God, there's the Ark right there. Just, wow, look at how he opened it up.
It's called luck. You Indiana Jones get luck.
It's called
movie magic, guys. It's called movie magic.
Movie magic.
I think what is great about,
apparently I lost
a movie like this. A movie like this though, but look at it though. A movie like this, obviously made in the 80s, obviously with people who don't get to rewatch it and break down every scene. Like Spielberg, probably if he made this movie today, I mean, there would be, because
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who literally will just break down every single scene and how. I think he has enough tact now to know, like, okay, if I put this part in this movie, how
Yeah.
are they going to take it? Is this an Easter egg? Is this just, like this just happens to be in the background? Like everything has a purpose. I think back then they just like, we got to make this look like the 30s college
Yeah.
campus or, South America or Egypt. They weren't thinking like, okay, I'm going to put this, I'm going to put this medallion over in this corner over here. And these movie critics are going to watch that and go, that has something to do with, that's a MacGuffin of the movie that we need to keep an eye on. It's going to come back. It's just like it's evolved. Like, this movie, it would be made differently. Like if they made the same exact movie today, they would have to like do a lot of revamping of it, just to kind of appease people like us who question every little scene in that movie. Like, why is this like this then? I think that does make no sense.
And I think
that's what 35, 40 years kind of gives you. Kind of affords you the opportunity to break it down even more so than like Doctor Strange 2, which we just saw. I mean, we can't really break it down that much. I mean, we can, but I mean,
we only saw it one time. I think maybe one of the reasons why,
that's just
going through all the research and all of it, I think part of the reason why some of this movie is so haphazard is the actual production of it, right? Like I mentioned before, Lucas came up with the idea initially while writing Star Wars. Then obviously he did Star Wars. Spielberg was doing Jaws, and he was actually shooting 1941, I think, when the script was being done by Lawrence Kasdan, who then and Lucas was moving on to Empire Strikes Back. So I think you are seeing maybe a little bit of a jumbled project, because this wasn't a, hey, we're all of us are on this project right now, let's work on it. It was moving all around constantly, I think. And so again, part of the reason why some of these scenes got cut or they ended up too long, I think it's just they were trying to figure all this out. So
and I really try to go into like these sort of reviews as what did we view this movie when we saw it for the first time, as opposed to how we're breaking it down nowadays, because all these backstories that we hear nowadays, all of these different little things, well, if this would have happened, then this wouldn't have happened. If this director wasn't this, then this, that's all doesn't matter. Like, what's the story that we're being told at this moment, and how do we react to it? Is this movie really as great as we remember it to be at this point in our lives and this point in its existence? And I think it still holds up. I mean, if you just watch it as a film without any backstory, anything like that, it's a great film. So I think it's higher than top 70 all time, certainly in the 80s.
All right, so the next category is Ma Meatloaf. So this is maybe the funniest or best scene that just makes you feel good. So Pete, we'll start with you first. What was your funniest scene? Or
part that made me laugh the most was when Belloc is at the top where the Well of the Souls, and everyone's out except for Indy, and Indy just laughs, and he's just like, "You son of a bitch," just like he just remembers the bitch line right underneath it. I remember laughing hysterically, probably because I was really young when I saw it, and he was like, "Oh my god," he said, "Son of a bitch."
Well, just the way he says it too. It was
a classic delivery of a line that could have very easily just been a throwaway, and I remember laughing at that hysterically as a kid. I
actually have that in my best quote section, because that's my favorite. Lawrence, what about you? What was your funniest moment?
I don't think it's a specific. I mean, I think this is how I viewed it, because I mean, I was trying to think of like a funny moment. I thought there was a funny moment when like when Indy captured the truck and he drove it and they hit him, and then all the villagers kind of like acted like, "Oh, we don't know where he went." And the guy came up, was like trying to sell the fruit, and the guy was like, "Get the shit out of my face." I thought that was kind of funny, but the fact that this movie is still, I gotta go back to, it's still rated PG. I was just like, this is such a violent movie. If you really take like, how many people die? Like, what's the body count in that movie?
it was like 60,
like for a
64 or something like that.
Yeah, like people were just like we were just people are dying. I mean, like a lot of them were Nazis, so I guess take it for what it is. But you know what I mean, like
Nazis.
Like I said, them guys are just getting exploded and melted and spikes through the face.
You could kill 6 million Nazis and would still be PG.
Yeah.
True. True. But yeah, I think like I said, it's just funny how they like the ratings were, because I remember watching 80s movie. I felt like there was nudity in 80s movies that were still PG or PG-13.
Yeah,
I don't even know PG-13. You know what I mean? Like it's just the rating system was so much different back then, obviously. But it's just kind of funny how it's evolved. But I think just Harrison Ford being, like you said, it's just he's such a unassuming hero type, where he's just like, I can go out there and be like a hero like him, because I mean he's like you said, he's not like he has these crazy martial arts skills where he's just this like, or he's got some military training. He's just like, I'm a guy going out here and I'm gonna mix it up with everyone else. I'm probably gonna get my ass kicked in the process, but I'm tough enough to kind of power through. But yeah, like I said, he is the like the most charming kind of like, he's the charismatic guy that we can all feel like, okay, this guy's not better than me if I were to like be face to face with this guy. You know what I mean? Like I could kick this guy's ass if I really wanted to. Yeah. And not feel like intimidated. Like it's not like Dwayne the Rock Johnson's playing this character where you're just like, this guy can just like manhandle whoever he walks into. So, sure. But I definitely like some of those scenes where, like I said, it's kind of like that chase scene, and then like the guy, they immediately try to sell him the fruit to kind of cover for Indy. So that was kind of funny. So like, get this shit out of my face. I don't want this fruit.
Nice.
Pop quiz. First PG-13 movie ever. Do you guys know the answer to this?
I don't think I do.
I
know, I'll know it when you say it, but
it was remade. Started off a group of young kids were invaded by a foreign land.
Oh, the Red Dawn?
Red Dawn.
Nice.
Red Dawn was the first official PG-13 movie.
Nice.
Also, Ghostbusters was a PG movie. Ghostbusters. Kind of funny, but I mean,
had the whole sex scene with a ghost, and the ghost gave him a blowjob, and that's okay.
Yeah, but
guys, we're tougher back then.
A lot of cocaine.
Effort, but you can get blown by a ghost.
A lot of cocaine back then, so times were a little looser back then.
Yeah. My scene, Pete already mentioned it. Pete seems to be stepping on all my toes here for all my answers.
I got big
but mine was the scene with Marion on the sub. I really love, like I said, you just see a different side of him there. And I'm pretty sure that I think I've used that maneuver before with a lady before. So very inspiring. Yeah.
Kind of.
What's the success rate on that?
60% of the time it works all the time.
Yeah. 60% of the time it works 100% of the time.
So like I already mentioned,
baseball, you're doing a good job.
Yeah. Next category is line please. This can be what's your favorite quote of this whole movie? What is the one you use the most? Or Pete already took one of mine, which is the haha, you son of a bitch. Haha, you son of a bitch. But mine,
I just think I go ahead, Paul.
Oh, mine we always use this, and I've used it earlier, but it's we have top men working on it right now. Who? Top men. And it's just such an assholey comment. And that's what I just love how that guy answers it.
For mine is almost like the response that you would give to somebody, almost like a mom joke, but when it's like they don't know what they got there, and you say, well, I know what I have got here. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you're
passive aggressive.
You're such a jerk. Your mom's a jerk.
Yeah.
It's like something to just respond. I think it started a whole movement for me on how to just kind of respond in a way. Well, I know what I have here.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, thanks, Marion. I just lost the Ark and it's fucking devastating. And you're happy that I'm here. Great. I'm not happy to be here. I'm actually quite devastated to be here right now. Yeah. But just because you have a smile and you're wearing a cool hat and a nice new outfit, then I'll give you my arm hold as we walk to get a drink or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a classic line in the most ridiculous moment of the movie.
Nice. Lawrence, what's yours?
I already kind of said it. I think it's hilarious. You can't do this to me. I'm an American. I think that's hilarious only because of how that would play out today.
What a great, when
I'm
you
in
say
your
it,
land.
it's a great
I'm
line.
in your land. I'm in your country. Involving myself in things that belong to you in your country, but I'm an American.
Yeah.
Like, what? How dare you? Like, what?
You can't do this to me.
Yeah.
You see what I look like and what you like. We like. Whoa! Like, I'm an American. Relax. But
How dare you?
I gotta
sir.
start using that more. I like
which
here.
is funny. Which
I
is
need to do it
funny
here,
because I
though.
went to. Which is funny because I remember going to Barcelona with my buddies in Spain, and I'm thinking like, and you know, we were in this part in Barcelona. It's called La Rambla, which is kind of like where all the action happens. And you know, we're partying and we're drinking, and I'm thinking like, no one can mess with me. I'm American. Like we're Americans. Like what could go wrong, right? Like we're like greatest nation.
Don't they
Biggest
know
army.
who you are?
Yeah, we're Americans.
I had
but
that
only when I was
same...
drinking, I felt like it was. I thought it was hilarious, but I think that's a funny line because that would probably not fly today if it was said of how kind of things were played out. But at the time, it was funny. I mean, watching it now, it's funny now. Like I wouldn't even think twice about it when I watched it as a kid, but today I think it's
funny
hilarious.
that it's so funny you have that point of view because I have the opposite about being an American. Sometimes, like when I go to visit, like my wife's from Italy. Whenever I go to Italy, my response is always, "Ignore me. I'm American. Sorry, just ignore me. Like, just forget I even exist. Sorry, I even brought it up," kind of thing.
I'm Canada South.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm actually from Canada. I'm Canadian.
Canada adjacent. Yeah, no, I think that's hilarious too. Just because like a hilarious line, only because like
it's a great line. It's perfect.
I mean, think about it though. It's the 80s. It's 80s when they made the movie. It's the Cold War.
I wish I had that answer.
It's like the Cold War going on. Like, I mean, we were the ultimate like good versus evil back then. You know, at least in our minds, or I guess however you want to play it out. But it's just we're America. Like, I'm American.
Hold on a second. I'm going to say the line, and then Paul, we can edit me saying that this is my favorite line. You can't do this to me. I'm an American. That's my favorite line. We're going to edit it in post later on. I came up with this idea. Gold.
Okay.
That is such a great line.
Next category is director's chair. What would be obviously try and simplify it. Don't get crazy here, but what would you change about this film? Was there something that you're like, you know what, if we did this, this would have made a big deal for me? I can give you mine if you need a second.
Yes, please just start it off because that's
okay. So my thing is actually kind of simple. So we talked about how great the music is in this, but if you in the beginning of the film, and this is maybe my own preference in my own directorial style, but I always love a good title sequence, especially with music. And I feel like this was a missed opportunity in this film to come out hard with a great, like with music that's a little more, I think, becoming of this film, because there's so many great themes in this film. But if you listen like the opening music, and I really noticed it this time, I didn't because I was specifically like paying attention.
Really?
But I didn't. The music in the beginning did nothing for me. It's just very like it's just very subtle, and I. But I would have loved to see like the logo.
It's very appropriate the way it builds up to the final character actually being revealed in such a dramatic way. You don't see his face up until that moment where he actually strikes, and then the music is just sort of bringing you along. I know what you're saying.
I just personally I love totally a film.
Appropriate.
I love a film like with the the music just comes in hot. And again, it's my personal style. Like the Patriot, right? Like when you watch the movie The Patriot, and it's John Williams as well, but like right away it's like it's the theme is like right away, and it's just like I'm already in it. And you know what I mean? Again, for me, with this type of film, like I would, even if it's the Raiders of the Ark theme, like start off with the Raiders of the March, and it's just like boom, I'm in. And even I don't know, it's just my style, but I like that because the films that do it, I think, crush it.
So Indy and Alfred Molina are going to be walking through the jungle. Dun, 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 like, no,
I would have to
redo
it. I would redo it, but I think there's ways to do it. Where
every other John Williams reference is totally on point. Harry Potter, he does it perfectly. Starts off with that theme. Same with Star Wars. It's right in your face. It's an explosion.
Okay. I have the answer.
But I mean,
the piece of music. It's dun 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 dun. I think
it was strategic though, in a way. I think they wanted to introduce Indy as a character. It wasn't Han Solo anymore. It wasn't Han Solo. You have to introduce this character in a different way. And how do you do that a little bit more strategically?
All I'm saying is you could do the same thing in terms of, I'm just saying, use that song from the beginning, because it's a great hook, and it's right away. You're coming from the Paramount to the mountain, and I think you can up the pacing, and it's just, we're right in this adventure right away, and the music is dun 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 dun, and then you do the reveal, the whole nine. But again, this is my preference.
Me and Lawrence will be
I've
on the
directed
right
a few more things than Spielberg.
For me, I think
my side, Lawrence.
I think the movie works. The movie works exactly how it's laid out. The only thing I say I would do different if it was today, I'd make it like a Disney Plus series. Like I would have this whole movie could be like 2-3 seasons of a TV show, because there's so many like those characters, like even like the Nazi, I wrote it down, the guy with the glasses, Major
Volt?
Whatever. Like these characters Volt are all guys you kind of want to know a little bit of backstory about. His best friend, like these guys, like obviously Indy's been on other adventures, and he's been with Marion and with Renee and all these other, like the rivalry that he has with those guys. Like there's more to that than we just saw on the actual movie. Like there could have been so much more. Like if this was like a series, like how it started and how it ended could have been the same, but they could have gone on so many different directions just on each kind of like interaction with like why it is like you said, he teaches at this college. Okay, how did that all come about? And then how do you just go all of a sudden I'm on this adventure in South America or Egypt or wherever he goes? And then like how does his friend what's the guy's name? Marcus, right? Like how did he meet Marcus, and how did all that stuff happen? And like it could have been a whole show, just right. And then it could have concluded with how it ended. But just like there was so much that could have been done. Obviously, I mean, it was a 2-hour movie, so I mean, it wasn't like it was a super fast movie. But I think that there's a lot more that could have been explored. I know they've explored it in the sequels and the trilogy or whatever it's called, and some of it goes further. But I mean, that could legit be like a real series just based off this one movie alone. To me, just kind of like, it's because you see how these shows are played out now with like the Game of Thrones and the Walking Dead, all these shows. I mean, now like some of these shows have obviously went a little too far or too long, but just how like that could have been a full season of a show just off this one movie. It could have been a 10-hour series, basically a 10 episode series.
Yeah, interesting. All right, guys. Now we're going to end here. I want you to give your top 5 Steven Spielberg directed films. I know Pete was struggling with that because he wanted to include produced films because that would have enabled some other films. But what are your top 5 directed Steven Spielberg films? Pete, we'll start with you.
Number 5, Catch Me If You Can.
Nice.
It was different. The tone of it was different. Even the opening music was something that I've never seen before with a Spielberg movie, and I thought the casting was great. I think Tom Hanks in anything is gold, and then you sprinkle in some Leo is great. And it was just a great cat and mouse movie, and I thought at the time it was brilliant. Number 4, Jurassic Park. I think that was the most innovative movie at the time. It was the first time they really brought in CGI graphics into a live action movie at that level. And they pulled it off. Technology was finally there with storytelling, and it actually made it look real and beautiful. Number 3 was Last Crusade, because how could you not love that movie? How could you not add Sean Connery to Indiana Jones and not have it be amazing? Number 2, E.T., because it was the first movie I actually cried at as a young child, and it was important.
It's not hard for you because you cried at
hard. I cried at lots of movies. And number one for me, no offense, is Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think it was, for me, it was and Jaws, I get it. Jaws was incredible, but I don't know. For me, Raiders was much more impactful on my life and how I view.
Well, you didn't go to the ocean for 6 years, so I would say Jaws was pretty impactful for you. But
I don't like the water, although I love archaeology.
Yeah.
So there you go.
All right.
That's my number one.
Lawrence, what are your top 5 Steven Spielberg films?
All right. Are we going 5-1?
Yeah, 5-1.
Build up. Okay.
Yeah.
So for number 5, Catch Me If You Can. I think that was a great movie.
What?
I just rewatched that one maybe about a month ago.
Totally
It's kind of one of those movies, like it's kind of one of those, like, if I catch it like halfway on, like if it's on like cable or something, I'll just like finish it. Like, all right, I guess I'm here for the next hour. Just finishing it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good one. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah,
Tom
me
Hanks.
too.
Plus, I love Tom Hanks. You know, like he's to me like my probably number one guy as far as from like childhood to now. Like I can get into his movies.
Yeah.
And Leo. I mean, you know, say what you want about Leo. He's had some pretty good movies. Actually, he's had some.
He's got a ton of great movies.
Yeah. Number 4, Temple of Doom.
Interesting.
That's my go-to Indiana Jones film.
Can't argue with it.
I you know, and like you said, because it sparked something as a child. Like I remember watching that. My sister, my best friend, and his sister. We spent a whole summer together, and that was like one of the movies that we had on VHS, and like having to rewind it. And I think it was like a bad quality, but we still watched it like every other day that summer. And you know, like it was an adventure. Like I said, those adventure movies.
Well, it's good you said that, and said, it was a summer we all tried to rip each other's hearts out, and it was just like what stays
it was, but
I think I went that route.
We had a whole when I lived in England, we had this backyard that had this like we tried to have our own adventures. Basically, we were like, man, I think he's gonna let a neighbor across the way, and then we think that something's going. We had a crazy cat lady neighbor that we had all these theories about, so it just kind of sparked that whole thing. But moving on, number 3, I put Jaws.
Of course,
you know, it's just like I remember it as a child. I haven't watched it probably in probably like 10 years or so at least, but I just remember like I can remember distinctly being like at like on a well watching as a kid and thinking like we're in the middle of nowhere. Did you ever go whale watching that field trip? Anyone else ever do that? So it was like that, like, man, this could like happen. Like this isn't a very big boat, and this boat is smaller than the boat they were on. And Jaws took that whole thing down. Number 2, Jurassic Park. Yeah, same thing. The technology was there. It still holds up for the most part, I would say. You know, especially knowing like, especially knowing, you know, even it was what, early 90s, right? 93, 94.
Something like
I think
that,
the movie came out. And it looks great. It looks great. I mean, it was kind of the same lines of Indiana Jones with what's his name? What's the guy's name? Michael Grant, right? Or what was his name? Grant. I know the actor Samuel. Anyways, great movie. Like you said, it holds up. The story's good. It was like one of those, like, I remember watching that in Laverne this is like when the big cineplexes started happening, not just like the 1 or 2 theaters, and like the THX sound, like the and I remember like watching it, and then like that brontosaurus scene where they're like stomping. It was just so loud and crazy. Like you kind of felt like this is where it's at. And then number 1, Saving Private Ryan. That movie was just like,
that was. I didn't know how to make that number 5 and not Catch Me If I Can. You know what I mean? Like,
that movie's just. I mean,
it was an important movie.
It's an important movie. I mean, that first scene alone, I could probably like. I mean, it's very like grotesque, I guess, if you're kind of just pure violence. But it's just like you kind of felt like you had to duck behind the little. You know what I mean? Like, you felt like, oh my god, I got to dodge these bullets too. Like I'm in the theater, like watching this movie, because I remember at the same time a Thin Red Line came out like not too long after that, and I was like, this movie has Thin Red Line has nothing on Saving Private Ryan at all. It was just like you really felt like you were kind of involved in this mission, so to speak, like the way it was shot. like I said, that scene, I know it wasn't just obviously one continuous shot for that opening scene, but it felt like you were just like literally a soldier that was thrown in there, and you were kind of like moving along with these guys as they were kind of like, they got to the beach and now they're kind of getting to land, and you really felt like I made it, like I was one of the lucky ones that made it through, and then everything's kind of all said and done, and we survived that part of the campaign, and then obviously
it's crazy that most people don't remember that that's not the actual into that movie. It's like the real first scene that kind of gets you. There's
because it goes into the flash, because he goes to the flashback, right? That's how it starts.
There's not a more immersive first scene that I can think of off the top of my head than Saving Private Ryan. Like you feel like you're part of that war. Forget about the Matt Damon as an old person right before that, but that's the real. That's why, man. That's such a good. I wish it was in my top 5. I just couldn't place it in there. Nostalgia took over.
Yeah, and just how it kind of like, they did all that, and then like, obviously Matt Damon's character was the guy that ends up being the guy at the end, but you would think like, man, all these guys are gonna make it. At least Tom Hanks, like that's the main guy, and he doesn't even, like, they did all that for him to not even like make it out of the war, So it was just kind of like, that's just how real war was. Like, your luck has to kind of play is involved with it, with obviously some of the skill that these guys have to go through as soldiers, but a lot of luck, you know what I mean? Like, you just have to kind of be in the right place at the right time, or
thank God I wasn't the first over here. Thank God I was in the first 6 people when they first opened up that boat, right?
Yeah, right.
Thank God I was number 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want that job.
Had nothing to do with your character or what you had to do with the story or anything. It was like, if you were 1 through 6, fucking done.
Yeah. Not a fun way to go.
All right.
What are yours, Paul?
Yeah. So my number 5, and this is probably going to cause a large uproar, but I'm going off of how many times I've seen it and like we'll continue to watch it, is Minority
Report. Oh my God. I don't know why.
Yeah. If I see it on, I watch it. I'm entertained by it. Yeah.
It's good.
It's just a super entertaining film.
I can imagine Tom Hanks just doing that. Like,
it's not top 5 good, but it's good.
Yeah.
I'm not Tom Hanks. Good. Tom Cruise just kind of doing it without the effects. Like,
yeah.
How crazy must it look?
Right.
So yeah, I don't necessarily like how it looks. There's a lot I don't necessarily like about it, but it's just a good, entertaining film. And
I love the movie.
I was debating E.T. or Jaws and all that. It's like I don't watch those movies that much, and that's why I give Minority Report the edge, is because I watch it more than those ones. So
right.
My number 4 is Jurassic Park, like you guys mentioned. It's the music, the cinematography, the balance of CGI and practical, because I think that was key too. They didn't just do CGI. It was a good mix of balance, and it's still the best Jurassic Park. Number 3,
Fun fact really quick. I got to throw this in. My friend had that on Laserdisc, Jurassic Park, so I did watch a lot. Laserdisc. It was this big, huge.
Yeah, it was this big.
My number 3, Saving Private Ryan, for all the reasons you just mentioned. It's obviously one of the greatest war films of all time. And my number 2, this is a sleeper right here, guys. Hook.
I thought about Hook.
I love Hook. I just watched it again, like not that long ago.
It's innovative for sure.
The music, and you're doing it, Peter. You're doing it. Obviously, I was
the first instance, really. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong. You can think of something before this where they take a known character and say, "What happens after?"
Yeah. So I always bought into that.
It's innovative. We've done it a million times since.
I know it got ripped. Critics ripped it, and it didn't do that great in the box office. But I'll tell you what, TBS, you throw in some Hook, you got me.
That would be a good number 5.
I'm hooked.
That would be a good number 5 on your list.
Yeah, I'm going off of watchability and how I got to watch Hook probably every year. You know what I mean? And I'm just based off my instincts. And then number 1, of course, I'm cheating here, but it's Indiana Jones. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark and or The Last Crusade. But I actually like Last Crusade more than Raiders of the Lost Ark. Only because I love the Holy Grail. I think it's for all the reasons that we kind of pointed out, the issues of this initial story. The Last Crusade, you add Sean Connery, and the dynamic between the two, the humor, like it's just I think to me it's a cleaner film because I think they knew what they were doing and they knew what they had.
Interesting that none of us picked his like two top sort of social kind of movies, which were like Schindler's List or Amistad, that really delved into like some
I thought of Schindler's List.
actual
I almost put that Schindler's List as number 5.
Didn't even end up on any of our lists.
And the only reason why I didn't is because
interesting.
It's a very powerful film, and I don't watch it that much because it's like
too heavy.
Yeah, it's just heavy. It's like, do you want to be depressed today? Yeah, let's put on some Schindler.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And Amistad's the same.
They're both very well done.
Yeah, I like.
And they make you go, man, people are fucked up.
Yeah,
it's like they finally have put some imagery behind what actually went on.
For sure.
A movie that I struggled not putting in my top 5 because I really love it, but I couldn't justify putting in my top 5 was Ready Player One. I love that movie.
Yeah, same.
But it couldn't be in my top 5.
A lot of people don't like that one for some reason, but I like it.
I will say honorable mentions, even though he didn't direct them, are like Back to the Future, Goonies, Super 8. I thought was great, and
Super 8's great.
Young Sherlock Holmes, I thought was incredible.
Nice. All right, next top 5 is going to be what is Harrison Ford's top 5 films? We'll start with Lawrence first.
Lawrence first.
All right, I wrote down obviously the Star Wars. I guess I'm recounting that as the franchise. If I'm counting as the franchise, I mean, to me, that's like if you had to say like top 5 imaginary movie characters of all time, like he's in my top 5. Like he's this badass, right? Like he's badass in that movie. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Indiana Jones.
I think, and to your point too,
I did the same.
I what Harrison Ford brings to the Star Wars franchise, especially in the first one, is acting. Like, I don't think Mark Hamill in the first film, he's still kind of, to me, getting his sea legs under him, acting wise. And Carrie Fisher kind of the same. They're both getting their sea legs. I don't think they crush it acting wise in that film. Obviously, they're iconic people and they grow into their characters better. But Harrison Ford comes out the gate hot and is great in it. And he carries to me the film when it comes to the acting portion.
I mean, like I said, he his body of work for that franchise speaks for itself. I think, who doesn't love? I mean, he's probably, I would say I like him better than Luke Skywalker. And I mean, as far as like the characters of that movie.
He's a man's man. He's not some.
Yeah, it is kind of like, that kind of, he's a guy, right? He's a guy like, okay, your fancy religious thing. Okay, cool. I've seen a lot of shit. Like I've been there. I've been there, done that.
You believe in that shit?
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool,
I would say the next one would be the Indiana Jones franchise. Like I said, I guess I'm going from.
You're going one.
I'm going one down. I guess I did the wrong way.
But we're gonna.
I'll go that. Kill the
mine's
suspense.
the same.
Well,
so
I'm not gonna come back with.
I'll do the same thing.
I can say like, some random movie, but I did like that one because those are two iconic characters ever, right? Like Indiana Jones, Han Solo, right? Like I said, you can make. I mean, I guess they did make the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, right? That was
1 and 2.
But I'd like that. I would probably go number 3. I did like The Fugitive.
Nice.
I think I can watch that. But
yes.
I think
Dude,
too, because Tommy Lee was in that.
Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones.
Tommy Lee Jones was in that, and it's just a great movie. And it's I do like those cat and mouse type movies where it's kind of like, oh, how's he gonna get, like they figure a way out, and it all comes to a head.
Incredible.
And so that was at number 4, right?
And then that was
number 3. Number 3, and then Patriot Games. That's a great movie. That's kind of like the whole, because I like
Jack
the
Ryan.
whole, was it Jack Ryan kind of, and I know that character has been played by different people, and the way it's kind of played out, but it's that kind of espionage, spy, government kind of double crossing type movies where who's really the good guy, or who do you really trust? like I said,
I'm
he plays
stealing my
these
material.
characters. He plays these characters pretty much. I'm not saying he plays them all the same, but it's like you could take Han Solo and put him in Indiana Jones or put him in these different spots, and like, it's kind of the same guy, but he doesn't have that, like, he doesn't overact to me ever in his movies. So I like that. And then I guess my number 5, and if I'm just kind of throwing one in there, because I'd have to kind of think about it, it would probably be, and I'm kind of actually looking at his list right here. Now, I'm not going to say Blade Runner because I never watched that movie from from start to finish. I know that's one of his kind of iconic ones.
Come on, are we gonna do 5 for 5 together here, or what? Come on. What are you gonna say?
The last one I'd probably say, and he didn't really play a big role, but he does play with a bunch of guys that I loved in it, was The Expendables. Because it's like all the 80s guys, all the like over the top action movie guys.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the Avengers of older 80s characters. Because and he fits right into that billing, you know what I mean? Like,
that's a way to look at
guys that are kind of like, they're obviously, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, they were kind of like the epitome of the, like, no normal guy could do what those guys do. But you got your Bruce Willis, your Harrison Ford, all these guys that also could be part of this team of guys that are part of this movie. And I just thought it was like a fun, like, because going in and watching that movie, that what it was kind of about these older guys. Obviously, they do these missions, and it was just a fun movie to watch. Like, I don't see it as like this is just corny. I looked at it as like, this is a fun movie because I know exactly what I'm going to get. I'm going to get over the top action stuff that's would never happen in real life. Even if some like military specialist was watching this, they'd be like, this is everything they're doing in this movie is wrong, but you love it because, of course, like, it's just stuff that just it's a fun movie. So
yeah,
I think that his movies kind of, the Harrison or the Indiana Jones and all these movies, they throw out like what can really happen and just say, like, enjoy the movie, like, enjoy it for what it is. Like, this is obviously not realistic to life. This is a movie.
Yeah.
I've never seen is Harrison Ford in The Expendables?
Yeah,
I think he does a cameo. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
they're all in
no
there.
idea.
They're like,
I've never seen it.
You should see it. You've never seen any of them?
No, I don't want to.
It has Jason Statham. It has like all these Wesley Snipes, and
I know about him, and I know who's in it, but
it's just like an over the top, like, corny action movie that is made purely for, like, fan service. Like, that's all it is. It's not. There's nothing else behind it than that. But I mean, like I said, his good movies are so top heavy. Everything else kind of falls below. Like, it's just like,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The 1 and 2, and then everything else kind of, like I said, I'm not sitting here going through, like,
it's very character.
I'm not going through Working Girl or Hollywood Homicide, which is actually not a bad movie, but
better in Raiders versus Last Crusade.
I would probably compare the
movies.
movies that are his superstar movies. 6 Days, 7 Nights was a pretty good movie. You're right about that.
I like
Dude, just hang up. Hang up.
No, Pete's angry at that one. All right, Pete, what's your top 5
about that movie? It's so bad.
What's your top 5, Pete?
Mine is a carbon copy of my best friend Lawrence's, which is Star Wars, Raiders. I went Fugitive third. Fourth was, I just made it Ryan.
Okay.
Right? Because I couldn't really differentiate between them. My fifth one it's not a prominent role like Lawrence's fifth one, but it was a movie called The Age of Adeline.
Oh.
And if you haven't seen The Age of Adeline,
I don't think it's on the list.
Dude, it's awesome. And Harrison Ford plays this character that just comes in, 60% through the movie. He just kind of shows up and it's just like, whoa, oh my God. And he does a great job. He does a classic Harrison Ford performance for this movie with Blake Lively.
Wow. All right. Well,
Lawrence is gonna go watch it tonight.
Mine are similar.
I'm looking it up right now.
It's so good.
My top 5 Harrison Ford films are very similar to your guys's. My number 1, although I chose Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones to me, I think
Over Han Solo.
over Han Solo. Yeah, only because
That's tough.
I think it's
No, you're wrong.
He's
Like,
just
how
the
can
star?
how can you say that?
Yeah, of course. Number 2, obviously Han Solo, Star Wars. My 3rd is Jack Ryan, Clear and Present Danger. My 4th is The Fugitive. I love The Fugitive. And my number 5, Get Off
Age of
My Plane. Air Force.
Yeah, Air Force One.
Air Force One.
But that's not Jack Ryan?
They're all like part of the same.
Harrison
they're all
Ford
those-
could be my president anytime.
Air Force One was Jack Ryan, though, no?
No, it's not.
It's not?
No. Air Force One, because he plays
Yeah,
the
then
president.
maybe that's my number 5.
Yeah.
Although
Yeah,
Age of Adeline
kinda-
is my favorite.
Yeah, Age of Adeline over Air Force One.
Dude. I thought it was Ryan. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. Last category here as we wrap up is what are your top 5 John Williams themes? Obviously, it played a large role in this film. And yeah, I wanted to know how you guys ranked your John Williams themes. I'll start this one off and then let you guys go. My number 5 is Harry Potter. Harry Potter theme is again iconic, and I'm actually reading the books now, and I listen to the soundtrack while I read the books, and it's fantastic. My number 4, Jurassic Park. Number 3, Indiana Jones. My number 2, which is why I was so high on my other film, is Hook. I love the theme to Hook.
And he's all about this Hook movie.
I know.
If I heard that right now, to go right over my head, I wouldn't know what that song is.
Oh, it's awesome. I used it in a video, I believe, too, like a highlight film. And then Star
Deep
Wars. Yeah, Star Wars is my number 1. And the reason why Star Wars is like there's so many different themes. And what I loved about what John Williams did with Star Wars is in every movie, there's a different kind of major theme within the movie. So if you look at from Star Wars and then in Empire Strikes Back, he added the Imperial March, right? Which is super iconic. And then I don't remember anything on. Oh, and then Return of the Jedi has like the Leia theme. When they find out like their brother, sister, and all that. And then in the prequels, when you're watching it, I remember watching this live, but when the Darth Maul theme, the dun, 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 like it was so powerful. Like there's not a lot of redeeming qualities about the prequels, but the Darth Maul theme and Darth Maul in general is awesome. And he was a huge presence in that one. And then with the new one, New Force Awakens, there were so many great themes in that film that I thought really helped it stand out. So that's why I put Star Wars in general, because John Williams did something that's so hard, which is you already have your classic theme and then continuing to add on it and make more iconic themes and music pieces. It's amazing. So
yeah, I'll go next, because that idea of taking a first movie that you do and creating an incredible soundtrack and incorporating many incredible themes attached to each character and each scenario, and then being able to expound on that with future iterations of the film is kind of like where my head was with this as well.
Yeah.
But I think mine's slightly different. Number 5 for me is the Indiana Jones. I mean, for a lot of those reasons. I mean, everything is iconic. When you hear it, you know exactly what movie it's from, but it evolves through each movie, and it's all very memorable when you watch each movie. You know which one it is. It's distinctive. Number 4 for me is Harry Potter, for that same reason. Not for the longevity of it, but John Williams set the tone for that franchise, an 8-movie franchise, where it basically was like, here's the themes of every character and for this film and for this movie, and then all these other composers can do their own iterations, but he came up with that classic Harry Potter theme. I mean, he's a genius. Number 3 for me was E.T. Yeah, you can't get more iconic than that.
Let's have to leave off.
If I could fly on a bike with an alien, I would want that music playing. I think that was the music that God would write himself. Yeah. Number 2 for me is Superman, because you can't
I forgot about Superman.
You can't get more iconic than that that original Superman theme. When you hear it, you know they're talking about Superman, and it's all about superheroes and how you're going to save the day. Number one is Star Wars. I mean, you can't start off a movie with such explosion and to be in your face, and then to kind of carry you, even if you didn't see the movie, if you only heard the movie, you would enjoy yourselves just as much.
Yep. All right. Awesome. Lawrence, what's your list?
Dude, my lists are so much better than my last list. I'll just say that.
I'll just say that you guys have said all the ones I've said, but these are my from 5 to 1. I know the rule.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park, pretty much for everything you guys said. I just think when you go, even like, because I got the kids, so I'm going to the theme parks, and you kind of like, you go to those, like the rides, you feel like you're there, right? Jurassic Park, and you can hear it and you know it as you're walking to it. It's just, there's certain songs, like you said, they just, what movie this goes to.
Yeah.
Number 4, the Indiana Jones. It's just adventure. It just feels like you're in an adventure. You already know what's going to happen, or that this is going to be, you're not going to be in one scene or one spot the whole movie. Like, you're going to be all over the world. Like, right? Like, it is what it, and it feels, that song feels like it's traveled around the world, right?
Yeah. Good way to put
it. Number three, Harry Potter. For a lot of the reasons that you guys said, it feels magical. Like, it sounds like if a wizard could create music, that would what it would sound like, right?
It's
like, I mean, it sounds,
totally.
It totally sounds magical. It sounds like there's mystery and whimsical. It's a, as much as I tried to rewatch those movies, they don't really, to me, hold up, especially the first few ones, but it does, you do get into that world, right? You get into the world of the whole Harry Potter world. Number 2, Superman. It's just,
I messed up on
I think that Superman,
I think
the Superman, just like you said earlier, where you just like, you hear it in the beginning and you just like, dun, dun, you like that build up of the whole like dun, 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 dun. It just works. And then
you feel the power. You literally feel the power.
Like Superman.
Like, this person is better. Like, he's just literally a Superman. Like, he is just like, he's flying with the music, right? Like, it just goes. When he kind of like, he
even
flies,
the
like, he orbits
of Superman is iconic.
He orbits Earth, and he kind of falls back in.
I think my Hook selection is very controversial.
Yeah, Hook. What are you doing?
Rufio was a great character. And then, like everyone's number 1, Star Wars. Like, you can't not be Star Wars. If that's, it's just ridiculous. Like, I just went to Disneyland, and we went to the Disney World, or the Star Wars land, or whatever. I don't even know what it's called, but it just, man, like, in my mind, I get like, because they have like that, like, pretty much like a life-size Millennium Falcon. Have you been there yet, or have you seen this?
No, it's on my to-do list.
It's ridiculous. It was one of those like out of all the things that we were gonna do that day, like, obviously I'm taking my kids, I want them to have fun, but I was like, we're doing Disney. Like, that's the Star Wars thing. Like, that's for me. And it just felt like I could just feel like the whole energy of that little area, and just like, because I could hear the music playing in my mind, like, as I'm walking through it, it's just like, it's just like, this is the, like, to me, the Star Wars movies and like everything that's come with it since I've been a kid, it's just been like its own lore, right? Like, and it's obviously, like you said, the music and these scenes, like, they play, like, the music is like a character of the movie, of the movies, right? Like, the music is. So that one. And another fun fact that I heard, that the most written in religious thing when they took the US Census is Jedi. Fun fact.
Wow.
So people go like Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, like, you write it in Jedi. Thought I throw that out there.
Wow. And then Klingon.
Klingon comes in at number 4. But I mean, Star Wars, come on.
Last fun fact that I found out, it's not that fun, but it was interesting. Interesting fact was that John Williams started, his first composition was 1959, which I thought, I had no idea that it was that long ago. I think that's incredible. He's been doing this work for so long, and
he's like 90.
Yeah, thank God for John Williams.
Yeah.
What a groundbreaker.
Well, that pretty much concludes film recommendations, I'm going to throw them out there based off of some of our answers. But Age of Adeline,
Dude, it's better than Hook.
Yeah, mine would be Hook. Mine would be Hook.
Look, if you watch Age of Adeline, I'll watch Hook again to see if it's really that significant in the world of Steven Spielberg and John Williams, which I can contest until I die.
I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get ripped apart for that answer.
But if you watch Age of Adeline, it's a great film. It's a great film.
All right.
Start to finish. It's really
Our
a great
next
film.
review will be.
Have you seen it, Lawrence?
No.
Okay, then why are you laughing?
I've seen Hook. I think that I'm still laughing on the Hook thing because
Hook, yeah, because Paul's ridiculous.
I just.
But if you kind of think of it though, there was a Return to Oz movie.
Yeah.
That kind of is the same thing. Obviously, super
I love that
dark,
film too.
but
I love Return to Oz. That was one
super
of my
dark, but like kind of like what happens after the happily ever after kind of thing plays out. I totally get it.
Maybe a good comparison would be like Age of Adeline would be like working at Cheesecake Factory, and Hook would be working at like Applebee's. You know what I mean? Like, there's a certain
fair. That's fair. That's fair.
Certain level of sophistication.
Yeah.
Added to one versus the other.
Awesome. Well, what a strong way to end this. Thank you guys
for your
time and your effort, and thank you, Lawrence, for joining us today. And thank you,
Peter. Fun, man.
You again.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll do this again, and
I won't change sceneries, by the way. I won't change scenes. I know I had to move from outside to inside.
You're like Cher with outfits, but with backgrounds.
And make sure you guys like and subscribe our new podcast channel, and there'll be other videos as well. And we're going to talk everything film. So thanks, and we'll see you next time.
And thank you, Peter, for being here as well.
I did thank you already.
No, you didn't.
I appreciate you, Pete.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lawrence.
I said thanks, Pete.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, you talked at me.
Well, maybe make it a little bit more like you're excited that I was here.
We'll check the tapes. We can always check the tapes.
Yeah, we'll check the tape.
Sorry, what was that? Oh, he did thank me. Oh, I'm sorry. You thanked me. Sorry.
Fixing everything.